Sports podcast.
It's pod time.
Nice.
Yeah, great.
That's where
I never know what you're supposed to do after I hear a grown man say that.
Intentionally leave dead air. I feel like that's just more work for you later.
It probably is more work for me later. Those dulcet Birmingham tones are Joel. Hi, Joel.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
I'm all right. Pretty happy. James, how are you?
Yeah, all good. How are you guys?
Doing well, mate.
Excellent. Good weekend?
Yeah,
Joel?
event. I've been hit by all four weathers in one weekend.
So I'm gonna have to edit that. I'll edit that now. Where I'll say Joel, and I'll have to come back. I'll come back to your bit, James. So I'll go, Joel.
Your bit's
good
going to get
weekend.
on you, James, because we need you to talk about the golf. So I need to go first, and then you need to go after.
I'm just enjoying the amount of editing Matt's going to have to. Yeah,
I thought you were wearing a Titleist hat for a reason. Oh, okay. It's the hair. Listeners, James has got a booth on. Joel, how was your weekend?
I had a lovely weekend. Thank you, Matt. I didn't take in a lot of sport. We were at a wedding for 2 nights, child free. So yeah, we had.
Were you?
Yeah.
Babysitters round?
Yes, the grandparents were here looking after our little one. So yeah, we had a lovely time. Thank you.
What do you do when you're away for the weekend? There's sport that's on and you need to check in.
Well, there was discussion. There were a couple of TVs up at the venue that we felt quite confident would be able to transmit Channel 4. Yeah, it wasn't received gratefully by the bride, so we didn't go for it.
Okay. Was the groom weighing into this hopeful Channel 4 attempt?
He's very much playing the happy wife, happy life card at the moment. So no, he wasn't very vocal about it.
Yeah, 40 minutes into marriage, didn't want to rock the boat. Good stuff. Nice weekend. What about you, James?
I had a weekend in Scotland with all 4 seasons over the space of 48 hours. So I feel like I've come back way more tired than I left, and also missed my team's promotion party, which was highly upsetting as I was taking it all in through BT Sports. So yeah, good weekend.
Well done to Chesterfield. What was going on in Scotland?
Scotland was golf this weekend with some of the family and some of the friends. We played in a competition up at Turnberry, which was good.
Trump Turnberry, to use its official name.
Yeah, proper Trump Turnberry.
Was he there?
He wasn't, but it is the most American place I've ever been in the UK, if that makes any sense.
Really?
It's like a giant country club in the middle of nowhere. But like everything is on like mega size. The hotel is enormous. Like the pathways are enormous. The roads are enormous. But the golf course itself is probably the best thing I've ever seen. And I've already booked to go back next year. So hopefully we'll get there. Yeah, they've moved it back a month though because of the biblical rain we got. So hopefully
you qualified through some sort of competition or tournament, did you?
No, this is strictly
Pay to play.
Yeah. It's but it's like deal wise, you play 2 of the best courses in Scotland and get a night in the hotel for cheaper than you could rock up and play the course. So it's definitely worth doing.
Some good golfers there.
Yeah, like a bit of everything. We took a guy with us who was a +4 handicapper, and it made him look a little bit silly, which made me feel much better about my golf. But when you
must have had wind on your back driving 500 yards at some point.
It felt like it was never like that. It was 40 mile an hour in every direction. Like we teed off in the sunshine. It was great. We got a photo and all that stuff. And by the second hole, it was hailing sideways. Like I was genuinely taking cover in a gorse bush, trying not to get battered by this hail. But yeah, and then we looked at the weather the day that we left, and it was sunshine for 3 days. So we really got a little bit unlucky there.
That sounds lovely, though. Links course like that. It's surely just always coming in sideways off the coast. You've got no escape.
It's just the historical part of it as well. Like you've watched the Opens there, the famous Opens that I've been seeing on TV, and then you play the holes, and it's pretty magical.
TV's in the clubhouse just showing Turnberry Open on repeat.
Well, I was trying to get the Chesterfield celebrations on. I didn't go down too well with the local community, but yeah, there's lots of golf on all the time. Although I have to say, the most expensive pint I've ever paid for, £11 for a pint in the club, which is disgraceful. It's pints of what they serve. Guinness is one of them, and then like a local Scottish lager. But £11 pints anywhere.
£11 for a lager?
For £11 for a Guinness. Yeah, it wasn't even in a Guinness glass.
Eh?
I know, just in like a nice ale glass. But I guess that's what you pay for the Trump conditions.
Mm. He needs all the money he can get. You probably need to cut that out.
I'm funding his presidential campaign.
I don't think he's not. I don't think he's going to be bothered about our podcast. If you are listening again, Donald, welcome. All listeners, welcome. Right, schedule for today. That was on the schedule for today, kind of. Golf covered. We'll talk about international football. We're going to touch on drafts in sport a little bit. There was the 100 draft last week in cricket. So we'll have a little touch on other drafts that happen around the world, benefits of them. I find it quite interesting, so I'll cover that off. Premiership rugby's back, club rugby. In my basketball notes, Celtics winning streak's back on after James's curse. Now 9 games on the bounce.
How many games have they played since the last pod? I feel like that's a running fixture.
Since the last pod, I think they've played 5. So interestingly, since we started... interestingly subjective. All right, last remaining thing on the agenda, a little bit of F1 from the weekend in Melbourne. Back to basketball. We'll cover off basketball, then we're done. So since we started, I think we recorded first on the 5th of March, so 20 days ago. Since that time, when I said they've got a 10-game winning streak, or 11, was it 10 or 11? 10 or 11. Anyway, they then lost a few games, and now they've won 9 games. So they've probably played 14 games in 20 days.
Oof, packed schedule.
That's a hell of a schedule.
You know how far they're travelling as well to some of these games. That's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. I bet they travel in absolute luxury though.
Yeah. PJs. That's what people in the know call them, isn't it?
I mean, they're all 7 foot. They must need about 5 planes.
I reckon they'll just charter a big... They'll have their own planes for these teams, I'm sure.
I think you're probably right, and we should probably look that up.
I mean, you've seen the NFL teams, they book out planes and put 70-odd people on them.
Good topic for next week. Bit of travel in sport.
Yeah, okay. In America, I'm accepting planes. Anyone taking planes in the UK is obscene, in my opinion.
Right. It is, but South Coast, right, think about how we travel around the country. So South Coast, you've got Southampton, Portsmouth, Brighton, potential Premier League teams, Sunderland, Newcastle. It's not a quick train. It's not a quick bus, is it? If you're playing Thursday, you play Saturday. How are you, Southampton boss, getting your team up to Newcastle?
There's definitely exceptions, all right? You found the one, okay? If you're going from one side of the country to the other, fine, all right? It's a 5-6 hour drive, fine, get a plane. But there's some of these teams are flying from, the Midlands to Manchester. It's like an hour and a half drive. What are you doing?
Well, was it Arsenal who got absolutely panned for flying to Norwich?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, some of it's definitely obscene. But let's find some
hold on a second. There aren't even any motorways in Norfolk, so it's not that commutable.
You had to pick the one place that Matt knows a lot about the roads, didn't you, Joe?
Look, I don't know the ins and outs of that situation. I just know that they got panned for it.
Yeah, I think they did get panned for it, and they won the game. They took a 40-minute flight from London City Airport to Norwich Airport. Fine. I'll take the win. All right, international football then. Let's have a run through. The only thing I know about international football this weekend was England lost to a Brazil wonder kid, and that seemed like a decent talking point.
He's a 17-year-old striker who's already signed for Real Madrid. So, yeah, I think wonder kid's probably the right term for him.
Wasn't he on the cards for someone in England?
Chelsea.
Yeah, but I think he was signed by Real Madrid in the summer, but doesn't move until next summer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is he not allowed?
No, he can leave Brazil until a certain age. Yeah, I think that's correct. But everyone who is, I'm a big Football Manager player, so people have been raving about this kid for a good 18 months.
Did you say Football Manager player?
Yeah, big Football Manager player in my past, Championship manager even before that. So these wonder kids always pop up quite early on there. But yeah, to see him coming on at 17 years old, scoring a goal at Wembley is on your Brazilian international debut is pretty impressive.
Bad start, is it?
Yeah. These Brazilians are just blessed with outrageous strikers, apparently. But the game in itself, I don't know if you guys watched it. I caught a little bit, and I don't want to slam Southgate too much because he's delivered quite a lot. But
what's he delivered? Trophies wise,
not trophies wise, but if you consider where we were in major
the England team has moved forward under him, I don't think that can be disputed. And I'm not a massive fan of Southgate, but
yeah,
why aren't you a massive fan of Southgate?
I saw a tweet that said that he was like a ham sandwich in human form, and that summed it up for me. It's just like completely bland and just not interesting at all. I feel like he doesn't come up with creative solutions to the problem that the squad has. He just continues with tried things that haven't worked for him in the past. Like, there are issues with that England squad, but there are way more positives with the England squad than there are issues. But he seems to play in a way that exacerbates the issues rather than allows the positives to flourish, you know.
So what's the main issue that he's making?
It's the wrong defenders. That's one. Like these.
Is it so? So it's his loyalty, is it?
There's certain loyalties, like to Harry Maguire and Henderson, and stuck with Phillips for too long. Like these are, and now we're coming towards another big tournament where his complaint is that there's not enough players with experience to come in for those players, but he's had 2 years to bring players in and give them experience. And he's chosen not to do that for lots of reasons, which I'm sure are well-founded and well-researched and all that stuff. But yeah, I feel like he could do things differently, and I don't feel like this England squad should fear anyone. But I still think we go into games against big nations on the back foot.
Yeah, I think
ultimately, when pushes come to shove in the Italy final, especially, we should not have lost that game. So he hasn't made good in-game decisions at those times, and there's other examples of that, but the Italy one is the one that stands out for me.
Yeah, I think the issue with Southgate is there's no real identity or style of play, which, don't get me wrong, is difficult on an international level. You don't get these players for a lot of the time. Trying to put in your own tactics is quite difficult, but these clubs now, a lot of them all play very similar at club level. The elite players, anyway, they're possession dominated. Go on, Matt.
But you say that it's difficult, but we know how Brazil play. We know how Italy play. We know how Spain play. A little bit Belgium too. Like, they're very specific styles of play. Is it because there's not an English way? Because those countries maybe have got it, like samba football in Brazil, like tiki-taka.
I feel like it's because the things that are associated with English football don't translate that well to international football, like high intensity and like physicality and all those things. Like, international football is a more methodical form of the game. It's a slower pace, and often teams are trying to cover up their weaknesses because you only have a certain pool of players to pick from. You're not going to have brilliant players in all your positions because of that. But yeah, I feel like France have like the longevity of Deschamps being there. They also have an absolute worldie in Mbappe, but they can play the game in lots of different ways. They can smother you, but also they can catch you quickly on the counter, or they can keep the ball. Like, they can do all of those things. And I feel like England can't quite do any of those things brilliantly.
That's the tactical now split that you mentioned earlier about Southgate. Like, if you have a great coach, doesn't matter if you don't have the players, like, how the opposition is going to play, and you can work out a way of beating them, which we don't seem to really have against those sort of top teams. What's the stat? We're against top 10 teams, we're 6 wins in 27, I think it was, under Southgate. So yeah, we can rely on the quality of a Kane or a Saka or a Foden to win the group stage games or a knockout game early on. But once we come up against a proper test, sometimes you'll get a great performance. Germany 4 years ago was a great example of players just gelling on the day and had a great game. But if we get found out, France in the World Cup, we don't really have much to come back with.
What's really interesting is that you said about a coach. Is he a coach or is he a manager? I get the impression he's a manager. He's not a coach.
100%. He's a manager with great people management skills. He's brought the fans and the national team together really well. I think he's done great in that sense of it. But if you want to win major tournaments, for me, you need everything. You need a tactically great coach. You need a together team. You need great players, which I think if you put a different manager in there, we probably have 3 out of 3.
Do we not give Pep $1 billion and get him to coach England for 5 years?
His odds actually aren't that bad to be the next England manager.
He's not going to be the next England manager.
I think he's probably all right where he is. Yeah, but I mean the thing is we knew all this before Saturday. I think it was a very typical international friendly where we didn't really learn anything new. That
you didn't need to watch it to know what was going to happen.
No, that Brazil side was very young. I think I've heard a few people say that they were surprised at how good they looked, considering the inexperience of the team. So that bodes well for them. But yeah, for England, I feel like one of the things that people talk about a lot with Southgate in his selections is that he too often picks a double pivot, and he actually didn't on Saturday.
What does that mean?
2 defensive midfielders, essentially. Two midfielders at the base of the midfield. Whether they're defensive or not is up for debate. But yeah, two people screening the back 4.
Who was that then? Henderson and Rice?
Well, it's usually Henderson and Rice, or Phillips and Rice. The question is who steps in for Henderson now that Phillips hasn't been playing for City and then has gone to West Ham and has really struggled. He doesn't look, you couldn't justify picking Phillips at the moment. So who else plays there? And he's got Mainu in the squad for the first time, who will probably play against Belgium. And if he does really well, then it could be him at the Euros. He's had such a good season. But yeah, the thing that people say is that he too often picks 2 holding players that when you don't need that. So on Saturday he didn't. He just picked Rice, but
Gallagher next to him.
Yeah, but Gallagher wants to push on, doesn't he? I think he's very much not a holding midfielder.
I'm not sure he's the answer either.
And Rice wants to drive forward with the ball. He does that really well for Arsenal. And those Arsenal defenders, are a level above certainly Maguire, but Maguire and Stones as a partnership are not Saliba and Gabriel. So, there was a lot of space in front of those 2 centre-backs that could be exploited. And against good sides, they will exploit that space. So I think everybody kind of got what they want in terms of the team selection, but then Southgate probably got what he wanted in terms of the way it played out, and he has his justification for playing two players in that position now.
Well, he'll keep his role for the summer, and then I guess so. He's got, when's his contract up? Probably at the end of the year or something next year.
No, I think I feel like he signed a new one that went past this tournament.
Yeah,
signed the Chelsea deal, did he? An 8-year, lock him in.
But there was a lot of chat about him to Man United. That seems to be a genuine possibility, like to the point where Keane and Neville and Carragher were talking about it on their podcast late last week. They were surprisingly up for it. I didn't really think he'd be their type of guy, but yeah.
That's interesting. As an Arsenal fan, I'd be really pleased to see Southgate at Man United.
Yeah,
I don't think he is impressive enough for the entitlement that Man United fans think they should get from a coach like a Mourinho or a Ten Hag or a Klopp if he hadn't gone to Liverpool.
He has some qualities that United do need, though. There's definitely a divide between the club and the fans at the moment, and there has been for a while. And like I said earlier, that is what he's great at. But the impatience that will come from being a United manager will not suit him. He is internationally, he has a 2 or 3, 4 week burst of being in the limelight, and then he can, have his quiet for a couple weeks, couple months until the next major international event, which will not suit him at United for me. Again, I was surprised to see him linked there, but Jim Ratcliffe being English, I've seen stranger things happen.
Yeah, quite interesting. So I'm going to go somewhere else, Joel, unless you had something more to say about that game. No.
Not of any value.
So equally strange, I was looking at the friendly results and I saw a friendly that went to penalties, which I thought was a little bit odd.
Yeah.
Croatia, Tunisia. I saw it had gone to penalties, so I had to look into why. And it was talking about this friendly. It was a Reuters news article talking about this friendly and then talking about through to the final. So I was trying to find what cup is this? James, you seem to have more information about it.
So from my understanding, they're sort of seeing what the UEFA has done with the Nations League format, which, I mean, some people think is a success. I think it's just too much football, but I think FIFA probably want their own version of it. They want some meaning behind some of these friendlies, and they're creating sort of mini tournaments out of them. So I think the 4 teams in this one, I had them listed somewhere, is Zambia, Tunisia, Croatia.
Oh, no, Egypt,
yeah.
Egypt, New Zealand, and Tunisia, Croatia. How did they pick the teams?
I've got no idea how they decided them, but they both went to penalties, and then there was a final between the two. For me, it borders on sort of a little bit silly now. There's so much football on. I can't say I'm ever going to get up for. I don't really get that interested by the Nations League. I don't know if you guys do, but
not remotely.
Yeah, if you think so, the Club World Championship is expanding. So the winners of the Champions League go into that mini event. That's expanding to include some of the Saudi clubs. The Champions League's got more games than ever. They're doing these international series. There is just too much football going on, and a lot of it is quite meaningless to me. They are pretty rinsed in the cash cow.
Sponsorship, it's just sponsorship money, isn't it?
There must be a market because they are just churning it out. So somebody's making some money somewhere, but I feel like it is to the detriment of the appeal.
I was sat there thinking about it, and I was like, how does it stop? Because you see, the odd occasion you'll see a player come out during an international break and say, "Oh yeah, we're playing too much," and then nothing really happens. But say your top players just start sitting out events, what really happens?
I feel like they do. I feel like when international friendlies come around, England players, probably 20-30% of the squad will pull out through injury. But they weren't injured. They weren't injured last week.
Yeah,
but they're injured for international duty, and Saka will be playing in Arsenal's next game.
I don't mind.
I can't tell you what his injury is.
Saka's been nursing an injury for probably half the season. I think he's played more minutes than he should be doing it. He's still youngish, isn't he?
Yeah.
But they've been saying he's been nursing this injury for a while. So I really don't mind that. I don't mind someone saying, look, Arsenal have got an incredibly tough run incoming. These friendlies don't mean that much. Saka doesn't need to prove himself in an England shirt. If you're feeling a little niggle, that's fine. Pull out.
So that's what the purpose of the international friendlies is for, to kind of make your case on the international level.
Yeah, but like Joel was mentioning, we're not using it to blood in new players. We should be giving this every chance to say, right, Kobe Mainoo, you had a great 20 games in United shirt. How are you going to do against Brazil? Jared Bowen, I thought Bowen was good when he came on. Here's a chance in 70 minutes in England shirt. But we don't do that really.
It's actually something that rugby does quite well with internationals. Is most international teams will go on a summer tour. So this summer, England are playing Japan once and then 3 times in New Zealand. And they will take a younger squad and they will blood people in. And then some of them will then transition into playing the home fixtures in the autumn internationals and then kick on into the Six Nations. And that's kind of like the formulaic transition. They don't have the volume of international games, obviously, like football does. But I feel like that's a pretty logical way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, more volume should mean more opportunities for more players, right? But we don't use it that way. And I accept that it's a fine line to tread for the coach. If he's losing a lot of games through too much experimentation, then he's on the hook, isn't he?
But you see, we've won an under-21 championship, and we're not putting enough under-21 players in. Like Kobe Mine, who didn't even play for the 21s, he got called up and then moved straight to the senior squad.
Yeah,
there's players in there that during a Nations League game we should be fielding 4 or 5 of them in a starting lineup, a few of them on the bench. If it's nothing that goes to the detriment of us for seeding, which it might do, I don't really know enough about Nations League to say. I just can't see a point in rocking up at Pandora with a full Premier League £500 million squad.
The Nations League is designed to give teams a backdoor qualification, and England are never going to need that.
Yeah.
So why not use it for that purpose?
Honestly, I look through the international fixtures today, and it's just there's nothing that's there's no jeopardy, there's no excitement in them. Argentina beat El Salvador 3-0. Yeah, everyone would have. Was it just a default win? They just gave them 3-0.
Just turned up.
Kenya, Malawi, Ivory Coast, Benin, Republic of Ireland, Belgium. I mean, it's just so many fixtures, and France, Germany, and England, Brazil are probably the ones. France losing at home 2-0 to Germany feels like pretty.
I think Germany scored inside 8 seconds. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh yes, of course it was. Yeah, fastest ever international goal.
Tony Kroos rocked up in his first game back and set a goal up after 8 seconds.
Why hasn't he been playing?
He retired, I think, after the last major championship there, and he's been called back for the Euros. I think he's in half decent form for Real Madrid.
Fair enough. I'm fine with that. Another player that was in an international wilderness, who has literally just announced his international requirement just before we start recording, Danny Carr. So he played probably 50, 60 times for England over the last. When did he start playing? 2011, probably. He first got called up for England. Rugby, we're obviously talking about now. Got called up 2011, played 50, 60 games, on the bench a lot, but got all the caps, and then was in the absolute international wilderness from 2016 onwards. Went 6 years without playing. And in those 6 years, he turned 30 and then aged 36, 37. Got called up and went to the World Cup with England and got a third place little bronze medal. The Tony Kroos of rugby. But yeah, so just announced his retirement today. So I was very, very proud as a Harlequins fan, and as the first Harlequin that I actually ever met, he was back in 2008, to be at his last ever England home game and his 100th game as well.
Speaking of Harlequins, speaking of rugby, do we want to bring up what happened to your team on Saturday?
Damn it. I think I missed it.
What was it? 52-7, was it?
52-7. I absolutely didn't miss it. So biggest waste of time of my life. I whipped through the rugby and I watched the whole game. Whipping through the rugby in an hour because of all the stoppages is actually quite easy. But yeah, playing away to Saracens, but it wasn't really away because they were playing at the Spurs stadium. So it was like Saracens' big fixture, where they had a lot of fans and they were up for it and Quins weren't. So the interesting thing is, Saracens had loads of England internationals that have now come back. So did Quins. But 5 of the Harlequins players that were on international duty were mainly on the bench. So I feel like they weren't really getting a run out and they weren't really on form. And playing this weekend, they looked rusty. And they just weren't clicking as a team. So I don't know what the guys that weren't on international duty were doing, but they just got bullied, and it was a bit embarrassing to watch. They just watching your team not up for the fight, literally like a boxer that's just kind of got a guard up and is just absorbing punches and then just gets knocked out.
I actually think, given the next topic is giraffes, I think giraffe could work really well in rugby. I just think the quality is so it's not spread out very evenly.
So some of the other club rugby games this weekend churned out some surprising results as well. So what else happened? So Friday night. So Northampton are top of the table, have been going great guns. Loads of their players got called up for international duty, played a ton of rugby, and it looked like it. They were really heavy in the legs, and had also rested a few players too. So they went down to Bristol, and they also had 52 points put on them. So they lost 52-21. Leicester lost to Gloucester. Gloucester have been having a bad season. So it was like this massive 75 days since they last played club rugby, most of the Premiership teams. That massive gap has kind of reset the league, and it's like it's going to be a league of two halves. It's like your form goes out the window as a club team.
Yeah, but it does for everybody then.
And the teams that can get it together and do well are the ones that are going to kick on and finish in the top four.
Very tight table, isn't it? From first to seventh, only 9 points separating them.
Given you get 5 points for a bonus try win, yes, it's incredibly tight. So we'll see. The running, there's 5 games to go. 5 games to go for all teams, and pretty much first to seventh.
What happens with rugby? Because there's a final, semi-final, and a final. Is it top 4 qualify for that?
Top 4 qualify. Top 2 get home ties.
Oh, okay, and then the finals, rugby championship. Is that Twickenham?
Yeah. Premiership final. Twickenham.
That's the one.
Yeah. Exactly. It's going to be an interesting run in. But what you say about draft, it's interesting because basically in rugby, how it works is you've got academies. So what you've got in the Premiership at the moment, you've got the 10 teams, and they've all got academies. So Bath and Bristol pretty much mop up the southwest of England. Newcastle mop up the north of England. Northeast, and then Sale the northwest, and then you've got the Midlands clubs, Leicester and Northampton Saints, and then you've got a few London clubs. But it's that distribution of talent, really. Like it's more about like the transfers, people going to the club that they want to play for, or the club that's got the money, despite the salary cap. But the draft, how it works well in drafts around the world, specifically, I think the NFL and the NBA drafts work well because it's non-professional players that go into the draft. So they're not allowed to have played in a professional season, or they've played in international leagues can go into the draft. So like specifically like in the NBA. They've got to be at least a year out of high school.
What about those players from overseas? Because they go into the draft, don't they?
They do, yeah. So you've got overseas players. So anyone that's not played in the NBA. So anyone that's not in the top 30 teams. I think there's 30 teams. Anyone that's not in the 30 teams that's played on a roster can go.
So you can have someone absolutely killing it in a foreign league somewhere, and they could just walk in as draft pick number 1 for free.
Yeah, and interestingly, that has happened. So in the draft picks over the last 30 years, there have been a couple that have come in. I can't
think of where he's from now. It was during the Jordan age that the guy they played in the World Cup and he signed for.
Well, you've obviously got. Remember, you've got Yao Ming. Yao Ming was a top draft pick, and he played for Beijing, someone or others. I don't know what the team's called, but he was a number 1 draft pick. Shaquille O'Neal. So I'm talking more specifically about the number 1 draft picks. Obviously, they obviously get picked because they're playing in the teams, but specifically, like the number 1 draft pick is the one that gets the most attention. So Shaq was a number 1 draft pick. Was Kobe? No. LeBron James was the number 1 draft pick.
He was straight out of high school as well, wasn't he?
Pardon?
Straight out of high school, LeBron.
So it's it's quite interesting because that distribution of talent that you get, you basically, and it gets allocated. So the number 1 draft pick, it doesn't go to who came last. That happens in American football. So if you come last in American football in the National League, then you get the number 1 draft pick, and then second last get second pick, and so on. And that's how it goes for every round. Whereas in the NBA, if you don't qualify for the playoffs, so you're not in the top half of the draw for the playoffs, then you go into the lottery. And in the lottery, you then get your positions allocated, which I think is quite nice and fair. And the reason why that one is good, I think, is because you don't get teams just like tanking their season.
But teams with the worst record still get more balls in the lottery.
Correct.
So they still get some weight. Is that a new thing? Because there was a concern over, throwing seasons and stuff.
It will have been, yeah. I don't know how new it is, but it will have been. But the reason why it interests me and when I was thinking about it this week is because the 100 have had their draft in cricket. And so they've got like their base of players that play for the club, the counties, the clubs. And then they've got a few picks that they're allowed to make of the England centrally contracted players. I think you can have 3. And then you've got overseas players that you can pick as well that go into the draft, that they basically sign up to go into the draft. They don't necessarily get picked. Same with the IPL, similar format. And it just, as a way of distributing talent, it really seems to make sense. Like, I feel like football is too far gone. But interestingly, you mentioned rugby, James, because I think rugby could do with something like that. You've got these academies, but I think and the club should probably benefit from what their own academy does. But also, if those players don't then go on to play, I think they should go into a draft. I think that's an area of development that's probably a good prospect for rugby, especially as there is Major League Rugby now as well. And I understand why in American sport it's so big, because they've got the high schools and they've got the college sport that's a feeder into the pro leagues, that they're not associated with clubs like the English model.
Yeah, I mean, the 100s, I think it's a great idea. And I think the draft was a great new thing to do. See, in English cricket, we don't really do it with the Blast. I just don't know how it fits long term in the domestic game. We already have the T20 Blast. The 100 lost. I mean, the year before, I was a little bit more interested in the draft, and there was a bit more hype about it.
I feel it was more mainstream. I'm exactly the same, Jack, because I didn't even know it happened. Whereas last year, I feel like I wasn't looking for it, but I still knew that it was happening. They made more of a song and dance about it.
I've got friends that work in sports advertising, and I think a lot of the initial deals were on 3-year loops, which ends at the end of this year. So I'd be interested to know what happens after that. I know the ECB have come out and said it's going to be here till 2028 or however long they've signed the deals for. But I just, revenue-wise, I think it's probably great for the women's game. The exposure the women's game gets from the 100 is great. The men's game, they have to be missing revenue targets, because I'm a big cricket fan and I couldn't care less about it. Mm-hmm. I feel like surely these feelings have to be I've been to a couple of games in London, and it's they're never really that full, never really that hard to get into. I just don't know where it's happening, where it will be long term.
I think short form cricket, what we love about it is that the stadiums are full. There's a great energy and atmosphere.
Yeah, but I mean the domestic game in general. I don't know if you've been to see any county cricket games recently, but last season some of the attendances that I went to were really low.
Did I tell the story on the pod about county cricket?
No.
One of the guys that I was close friends with there, that was on my course, I was watching Notts play against someone. I think they were playing against Sussex, actually, because I kind of loosely follow Sussex. So I was watching it on Sky Sports, and it the TV panned round the stadium. This is Sky Sports, televised, no one in the ground, pans round and then focuses in on this one guy that's got his little lunchbox and eating his sandwiches on his own, scoring the cricket, and it was my friend from uni. But that's synonymous with county cricket. It is just the odd couple or singles of fans dotted around these 15,000 seater stadiums.
There's no prestige in it.
There's not.
Probably more than just a rugby, more than just a cricket. The domestic game outside of football is definitely streaming at the moment. I'd love to see something that brought it back. Whether that be a draft, I don't know. But yeah, there's just so much sport, and it's hard to care about it all.
It is. Yeah, you do all sports podcasts, and the focus really has to be about football because there's so much football and there's so much media coverage. Like there's so many stories around it, and it's like it's the stories and the jeopardy that you get specifically like in the Premier League for us. But then so fantasy football is interesting because of the draft, and I think probably the most fun for me in fantasy Premier League this year was the draft night that we did.
Yeah, that was good fun. They've actually released another new product for next season. I think today they've released a whole new game where you get 100 million every week, I think is what I was reading, and you get to build a team for that week.
Every week?
Yeah, every week.
Oof.
Imagine how many times you forget that. That seems like a lot of extra admin.
Probably worth giving it a go though. But I loved it. Like doing the draft was great. You got to put in the research for who you're going to have as backups, like who you mainly want as your core players, who's going to be your first pick, and it is a bit of a lottery who gets first pick because they obviously pick Haaland. Was it you, Joel? You got
yeah. I think, and I've been in a few like draft leagues where it's really good if you get quite a lot of people because then it comes down to the really nitty gritty points that a guy might get you 2 points and it's great. Like when we had it, obviously there was 5 of us, so we all got pretty much a great team off the rip. Whereas, someone pulls out of Rodrigo Muniz, for example, who scored 7 weeks in a row, you go, oh right, okay, he's flying now. But yeah, the draft is definitely a good part of it. We'll have to do it again next year with a proper league setup.
But yeah, the draft in rugby, like that distribution of talent would be really good. And it's part of it is because I want to see the talent dispersed, but also because there's the salary cap, because these other sports have got salary caps too.
Salary caps, designated players, centrally contracted players. They can really get a lot from cricket.
Yeah, I think there's many different models. I don't know what the right one is, but I just like the distribution of talent. I like homegrown talent, and you have those core players that are in your squad. But for those that are in the mix, then they should go out to a draft. But like you have in football, you've then got how many other clubs? 150, 200 clubs in the league or whatever. So
yeah, with football, it's just, I think it'd be way too complicated with the pyramid and non-centralised academies. Like clubs would need their academies, especially because they're so important with PSR and FFP, like we mentioned the other week now. Like they're too valuable to give up, so you'd never get it. But yeah, great movie, Draft Day.
Great movie.
Really good movie.
I've not seen it. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, if you're interested in drafts and interested in American sport, great movie about like lack of house wrangling on draft day. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing is you can trade your first or your draft picks for 4 players or for another pick. And yeah, just the actual game of the draft and how it can set you up for seasons to come, like for years and years to come. I think it's quite fascinating. The data and the detail that must go into it now, and the part that some optimizing tools and AI must play in it to be doing like this on the spot detailed analysis, because you got, I think in NFL, I think you have 5 minutes.
You have 10 in the NFL and 5 in the NBA, and then
it drops down time-wise. Yeah, 3 minutes. 3 minutes to make your pick.
Yeah.
It's just
you've got to
a big decision.
Like you say, you've got to have all the data there at your fingertips. Like they probably all have either very expensively outsourced software or very expensively constructive bespoke software that like they just plug into and can make decisions on the fly there.
Well, that's quite interesting is how that data gets compiled then, because at the moment you've got like the NFL combine going on, where the players are submitting their stats and they get invited to go and do the combine day. But I saw actually that of the players that are invited to go, most of the top picks for the NBA choose not to do it. They would rather get picked on reputation than have an on the spot, like their data put up against someone else's. So whereas the people that are in the bottom half of the pitch, they would rather do the combine day because it's their chance to stand out. It's quite
I mean, I wonder if it's like players who have played for like lesser known colleges, and maybe their data isn't as available. So they've probably got like tons of data on the players who play at like colleges with good sporting prestige, or just like big ones or whatever. And then there's probably these smaller ones where the data isn't really collated.
Yeah, you see, I was looking at some of the NFL combine stuff, and they were like listing these players that have nothing to gain by competing. They're only going to make their stock go down.
Yeah.
And then, like you say, you have the players that have everything to gain. So the players that have the lower reputation want everyone to be there because you're going toe to toe with them on that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm probably of the opinion that they shouldn't have a choice. If you're in that process, you have to do every drill that day. Because if you can't perform on that day, why would you want someone in the Super Bowl doing something for you on that day if they can't perform?
Get your stats on the board.
Exactly that, yeah. But yeah, interesting process. Can't imagine we'll see it in football anytime soon. But
I think one of the combine things. So they have like the 40-yard dash. Gosh, it pains me to even say that as a sentence. Sprint. What would that be? 35-meter sprint. So they have that, and then there's also like they've got a weightlifting thing. It's like how many reps of a chest press you can do, or something like that.
Yeah, vertical reach, jump. They do drills. Throwing out their longest pass without even really trying, just dashing 80-yard passes down like it's nothing.
Yeah. F1 was the last thing. Melbourne, by the way. So the F1 was in Melbourne this weekend.
It was a 4 a.m. race start on Sunday morning for the UK people.
Oof. Didn't it used to be the opener Australian Grand Prix?
It did. Yeah, it used to be. Yeah. That's been superseded by Middle Eastern fixtures, as with most sport now. Most world touring sport, like the golf.
Yeah, they had a bit of a chaotic race from what it looks like. Was it 3 or 4 DNFs? Obviously, Verstappen being out always makes it slightly more interesting.
Well, it was more interesting before the race even started. So, Williams, Alex Albon crashed his car. So they could only enter one car into the race, and it was Logan Sargent's car. So, because Alex Albon is the better driver, they gave it to Alex Albon. So Logan Sargent got punished for Alex Albon's crash, which I love. I think that's great. It shows he's the number one driver. They said he's going to get more points. So all of their eggs in one basket. So that was the first bit of jeopardy.
It can't be a very nice place to be over the weekend, that garage. I mean, you can understand why. Obviously, Sargent's a bit slower than Albon. Albon is that number one. He's a very highly rated driver. But yeah, I can imagine it's a bit frosty between everybody in that garage at the moment, especially when Albon didn't even achieve any points.
He didn't. He was one place away from the points.
Yeah,
he was 0.6 of a second away from points, and I don't think Logan Sargent would have done any better. So yeah, I don't know.
The race itself, I don't know if you saw the Russell crash. Alonso essentially.
Wow. Yeah, go on.
He did brake test him, but Alonso is probably the most experienced defender on that grid, and he just, into the last lap, just slowed himself down into a corner where he wouldn't usually slow down that much. Probably caught Russell slightly out.
Well, no, they've got the data to show that on every other lap, he did exactly the same thing at the corner. And then on this lap, when Russell was behind him, he did something totally different to what he had done on the previous corners. Doing that on a 150 mile an hour corner is just so dangerous. And turned out that it caught George off guard. He broke and then he accelerated, and then George got too close to the back of Alonso's car, clipped the wall, and then turned the car over on its side. So he's in this 150 mile an hour corner with knowing that there are 3 cars that are probably within about 20 seconds of him that are coming up to the corner, and it's blind and they're not going to see him. So he's on the radio panicking, saying, red flag, red flag, red flag. I'm upside down. I'm in the middle of the track, red flag. And then after about 10 seconds, a virtual safety car flag comes on, which probably isn't sufficient. They probably should have stopped it given the position he was in the track. But yeah, it was high stress. And you can see what, like, when they have a crash like that, they understand the risk that they take, like driving at that speed in those cars.
Yeah, luckily it was Stroll behind him, 20 odd seconds, like mentioned, and the engineer was pretty switched onto it. But you can hear the panic in his voice, can't you? Imagine being upside down in the middle of a racetrack at one of the fastest corners. You're going to be panicking.
Yeah, no way that you can be cool about that.
No, but luckily, well, I say luckily, I don't think it should even get to that case where it's ever lucky in F1. Everything should be safe as possible. That no extra damage was done. Yeah, not a great weekend at all for Mercedes. The Hamilton engine cut out. Honestly, every time I watch a Mercedes race at the moment, I think that Hamilton might have just gone on to an absolute masterstroke to sign for Ferrari next year. He might actually have a chance of winning something.
Well, Ferrari got a 1-2 in the race as well. So Verstappen's car also broke down. Something happened with I don't know if it was with the rear brake or whatever, but something blew up.
He's right. He described it as like driving with the handbrake on, and essentially it just couldn't cool down because it was stuck on, obviously overheated and caught fire. But there was like maybe half a lap where his car is smoking and he's inside DRS of Sainz. He's still keeping up with him, even though he's got his brake slightly on and it's about to catch fire, which just shows how much of a rocket ship that thing is.
It does, but then the fact that it is a rocket ship, but the fact that Perez didn't win the race, that he really is a number 2 driver. They need someone quicker. They need someone quicker challenging Verstappen, like George Russell is for Mercedes, challenging Hamilton and Leclerc and Sainz. So Leclerc and Sainz is the other interesting one, right? So they've said to Sainz, "You're gone. We're bringing in Hamilton next season to race with Leclerc."
It's been confirmed that he's going to lose his seat.
Yeah, well, I mean, Red Bull have confirmed that they're looking at Sainz, so that's probably probably the best case scenario for him. He gets out of a Ferrari and gets into a Red Bull.
Yeah, it is, but he is the number 1 driver in Red Bull at the moment. Like he's looking faster. He's looking faster than Charles Leclerc. Like
Ferrari.
He's ahead. Like Leclerc's ahead of him in the season so far, but Sainz looked the faster and better driver this weekend.
Yeah, double patch. Leclerc is outrageously quick. I just don't think that you can take.
He is, but I don't think he's got the mental head. Go on, Joe.
So I was just going to say, I feel like some of it with Leclerc is reputation as well, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just so quick in qualifying. And if Verstappen, I know it's if buts and maybes, but if this Verstappen doesn't exist and this car doesn't exist, he's probably won back-to-back world titles. Leclerc has. He's a very quick driver. I mean, he gets very unlucky on Sundays. You see him qualifying first, and this record that he has of pole sittings and not converting doesn't look great.
So it's meant, but that just shows the mental game that Formula One is. And the other season, not last season, but the season before, it was Red Bull and Ferrari were level pegging, and Leclerc should have been up there. But he was just losing his head in races. The pressure was getting to him. I don't think he's got the cutthroat needle that.
He's been on the end of some horrible things at Ferrari. Like he had a lead at Monaco where they asked him to. Some of the decisions that have happened to him, he could have been 100 points better off. He lost his hydraulics on a formation lap in Brazil. Like honestly, he probably has one of the worst patches of luck. And if they get some decent strategists in Ferrari, he'd be very, very, very much better off. They'll have to step it up because Lewis Hamilton will just shout at anybody who's giving him nonsense at Ferrari.
Yeah, because as the number 1 driver that Lewis is probably going there to be, but I know you shake your head, but he is. That's the reason why he gets paid $200 million a year, because he's the number 1 driver.
He's not going there to play second fiddle, is he?
They'll be equal.
They will be equal.
Do that?
Yeah,
they'll be equal officially.
But ultimately, there's decisions that need to be made in races, aren't there? And
yeah, but you find a lot of the time now it's like strategy led. So if someone's on a strategy that's going to benefit them, you'll see team orders. But
which is why that's why they often do a alternate strategy. So they'll hedge their bets.
Yeah, I think next year could be great to watch Leclerc and Hamilton go at each other if they both have a decent season and Verstappen has a good car again. I'd love to see it.
And Sainz versus Verstappen and George Russell versus who's going to be Mercedes number 2 driver? This young. No, it's the other Finn.
Oh, Antonelli,
yeah. Kimi, is it Kimi?
Yeah.
Kimi Antonelli, yeah. So that will be interesting. A young gun against George Russell.
Is he someone who's like already on their books?
Yeah, he's been a Mercedes junior driver. He's been a Mercedes junior driver for a few years. George Russell was as well, Mercedes junior driver, like for most of his junior career. So
you don't think they'd go and try and get Norris?
No, Norris is tied in long term at McLaren. Someone's paying big money to buy him out of that contract. It was only was it last year or the year before he signed until like 2026 or 2028?
Wow.
Yeah. Loves it. Loves McLaren.
Sometimes.
It's a little harder. I saw him on chicken shop dates. Have you seen it?
I know the concept.
Amelia, I know.
Amelia de Moldenberg.
That's the one.
Yeah. So I watched his chicken shop dates. Yeah. He's a bit older now. He's not a young one on the grid. Like he shouldn't be like doing his pranks and messing around anymore. It's proper race time. They need him to deliver. And I feel like when he was younger, he got away with being like the cheeky one, the prankster on the grid. But now it's like, you've got to step up. You've got a massive contract. The team need you to deliver. They need you to be the number 1 driver. And he's got a teammate in Oscar Piastri that pushes him as well. Piastri's currently ahead of him, just 1 point ahead of him in the standings. But he's got a teammate that will really push him now. So I think you'll probably see the best out of Lando in McLaren this year, with a more competitive teammate than he's had in the previous couple of seasons.
Decent car this year as well, seems.
It is very, very vibrant.
I like it. Papaya.
Is that what it is? Papaya.
Papaya.
All right. I think we're pretty good. On time. I've enjoyed our chat. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Up next week, travel and sport.
We got next week.
PJs.
Yeah, we'll see if we can squeeze it in around. It's City Arsenal, isn't it?
Oh, big game.
Big game.
Huge. What else is going on next week? Oh, there's a full Premier League. There's 8 fixtures on Saturday. That's a great day to sit and watch sport.
Yeah, lovely.
And then I'll be on the Champions Tour at York Way on Friday, so I'll give you all my lowdown of how I feel about York.
Oh yeah, lovely.
Yeah, I've got the inflatable trophy ready to go. The lot.
Fantastic. And then we've got a week off the F1. We're back on Suzuka in Japan. Race weekend, 5th of April. So,
but yeah,
look forward to that. And then we'll be building up towards the Masters very, very soon.
I'll come in and maybe I'll start giving out betting advice. No, I won't give out betting advice. That's a terrible idea.
All right. That'll do then. Thanks, James.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, guys. Have a great Easter.
Cheers, Joe.
Cheers, Matt. Cheers, James.
So if you want to get in touch and you enjoy listening, make sure to rate us on Spotify, 5-star. If it's less than 5 stars, don't rate us. And feel free to get in touch at allsportspods@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time.